and author. I'm also a grief counselor. And I'm here to talk to you today about how to overcome being overwhelmed. I don't know how many times you have heard in the last 8 to 12 weeks difficult times, horrible times, unprecedented times. Everybody is using this profoundly uh, big language. And when I say big, emotionally loaded. Everyone is using this emotionally loaded language because, of course, for many people, this is a devastating time. This is absolutely a difficult time. This is an awful time. It can be a joyful time. It's a lot of things for a lot of people right now. But it absolutely is unprecedented. And when we hear this language over and over again, or we use it over and over again, or we say it to ourselves or others over and over again, something happens to our body. Literally, our chemicals in our body change. Every emotion that we feel gives off a chemical that then tells the body what it needs to do. Maybe it needs to be on high alert. Maybe it needs to, hi, Chad. Maybe it needs to pay extra attention. Maybe it needs to be calm. Maybe it needs to be excited. Maybe it needs to feel anxious so that it can be careful and aware. And when we have those kinds of chemicals that are created from words, from inflammatory language like difficult and awful and devastating, when we hear that language over and over and over and over again, that actually creates inflammation in the body. And when we have inflammation in the body over a long period of time, we become diseased. So I want to talk about when you feel like something is difficult. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking about whelmed, what it feels like when you are overwhelmed. So I looked up the root word whelm, and it means to be buried. And you know what? Yes, we are all being buried with things that we don't know yet what to do with right now. So when we talk about being overwhelmed, being more than buried in a situation when you feel like you're up against a wall, what do you do? When we feel like we are up against a difficult time, it is the unconscious recognition that we are up against something that's new or something that is so large we can't easily see its parameters. So what that means to us is that we need to take a step back and begin to break down what appears to be difficult, the idea, the situation, the opportunity. We need to see the larger thing and then take a step back and break it down into pieces, right? You can't move a mountain. New York is in the house. Hi. New York is totally in the whelm. New York is whelmed right now. Oh my God. So how do you begin to break down what has been exacerbated and enlarged for you, oftentimes by others, then by ourselves, right? The first thing that we want to do is we want to understand that the language that we use, hi, Sat, the language that we use amplifies what we feel, and it amplifies the relationship to our physical body and our wellness. Emotions oftentimes drive our choices, but they don't need to, nor should they. We have emotion because emotion is what brings down honesty from the creator. It brings down a higher vibration of information that as it enters our body, it pushes out these other strong feelings that we're having, or the feeling of being overwhelmed, or the feeling of difficulty, right? So when we create a space to allow ourselves to grieve, to laugh, to cry, to scream, not at others, but just in our own solitude to get the energy moving through our body and out of our body. When we allow ourselves that opportunity, it gives us a space to feel complete with the emotion so that we can then see what is triggering the feeling of being difficult or the difficulty. And it allows us to better choose a strategy that not only serves us, but serves everyone around us. One of the things that we're really working today, that we're seeing all the time, is how people, they choose themselves first and then they choose others. And on one level, you're not wrong for saving yourself. If you're in a situation where you are the matriarch or patriarch of your family, you've got to be well to help the others that you care about be well. But what's happening in this pandemic is that we are all learning that we are all interconnected and we are all on some level family. And we have to be well, but we also have to make sure that others around us, not only the people in our short circle, but in our larger circle, everyone needs to be well. Because if everyone's well, then we will all be well. Mr. Obvious says. So let's talk more about how we think, how we speak and think ultimately drives our perception, our expectations, and then our choices, right? So whatever you feel drives how you perceive what's happening in your life, what you experience in life, what you expect out of that circumstance, and then the choices that you make to resolve or move forward in it. Know that. You want to ask yourself, is this a problem or an inconvenience? Okay, that's a good litmus test. I don't have the food that I like in my house, and I can't go out to get more. That's an inconvenience. I don't have any food to feed my family. That's a problem. And when you will acknowledge what you have, it will allow you to create a space to divine what you need in order to get your problems resolved. There's always a resolution. I say that lightly because I know a lot of you out there are experiencing extreme trauma, extreme loss, and there's a lot of death. Many people are dying. Over 1 million people have died in this pandemic. And that means that those people have families and loved ones and stories that we may or may not know. But even in death, there is something beyond what we can see. That's not to make light of those who have experienced this loss, but for those who are experiencing loss right now, to know that if you will allow yourself to walk through what feels difficult, one piece at a time, and give yourself the permission to be patient, give yourself permission to grieve, and give yourself the permission to be where you're at in this time of trauma, then it will allow others to be clear on how they can best serve you and each other. So, what is collective freedom? Anybody have a thought on what that means? What is collective freedom? It's what I want versus what we as the collective need. Right? So a lot of people, I'm here in California, and people are up in arms because our governor shut down all the beaches. Because when they opened the beaches last weekend, people just went with absolutely no regard, really, for themselves or others. When people wear a mask, we're wearing it to regard other people. And we hope that other people will wear a mask to regard us, right? To take care and to have respect for our space and wellness and health. So when we have a collective freedom, it's not about whether or not you're free to do these things. It's whether or not you should allow yourself that experience. It's not that you're not free to go do it, it's that you need to consider the choices that you make before you give yourself that freedom, before you make that choice. No matter how you feel, you always have a choice in what you say and what you do. And it's imperative to remember that. You and all the people that you will cross paths with right now all have something going on. They all have strong feelings. They all have the same, oftentimes anxious or broken heart that you have. And when you can own that and be accountable for your own, it creates a space for everybody to live in peace with each other in that way. So these are the things that I wanted to talk to you about today. If anybody has any thoughts or questions or ideas, I am totally up for a discussion if anybody's got one. And if you don't, that's totally okay too. Is anybody out there feeling overwhelmed right now? Because I can actually see the comments. Last week I did not see the comments. I had it totally covered up. Okay, well, I will leave you with this then. When you feel like things are difficult, stop, take a step back, and ask yourself, what do you need now? What is the thought, idea, or action that you must take or be receptive to now for what has the next priority? Give yourself the opportunity to feel what you feel in a safe, quiet space with yourself, not putting it on others, but having it. And then go off into what you need. And then finally, really, really ask yourself what is sitting in front of you. Is it an inconvenience or is it a problem? Because when you can acknowledge either of those, that's a step forward. And always with a step forward, it creates momentum. So I'm getting a few comments here. Jeb, I see that you are having some anxiety these days, and Sat. Okay, so Sat's talking a little bit about emotional exhaustion, and I want to say that that's something that everybody's experiencing right now. I mean, that I don't know that everybody's experiencing it, but it's common in times of cultural trauma. And if you're having a personal trauma, meaning you've had you've lost somebody's died in your life, and then you are having to be around this whole other situation with other people who are also grieving or in trauma or in fear or in anxiety, sometimes it's really hard to navigate that. And it can be exhausting. And so give yourself permission to sleep a little more if you can, because sleeping will help the body to regenerate and offer you more energy, more clarity about what you need to do to navigate further. But have patience with yourself. First and foremost, be patient, because in grief, there is always an end to the grief. There may not be an end to the loss, but there is a mourning of the loss and a transition into a new way of life that comes after the loss. But grief will, in fact, end. Anybody else have any thoughts? Any questions? Anything you'd like to talk about? Yeah. So how about this? Who out there, I've been really racking my brain as to what I can say instead of these difficult times. Without, downplaying the trauma for some and not upticking the drama for others, right? So I was thinking, these are profound times. These are unique times. Um, Feeling like things are coming to a head. Tell me more about that. Um, what do you mean by that? Stephen says he's feeling like things are coming to a head. And okay. Ah, okay. Yes. So I was thinking a lot about social media, and one of the things that I was writing, I'm actually sending out a newsletter. I'm in preparation of sending that out sometime today. So go to traceedunblazier.com and put your name on my list so that you can receive it, because it'll have some of my latest information on grief and other things. But I was thinking about that exact idea, that people really are coming to a boiling point. And they are so overwhelmed, so frustrated, so anxious, so confused, so sad, and so depressed, and unmotivated to deal with their job loss, or maybe their personal loss, or their familial loss, or having to get up and go to work. The people who are out there working today and having to work every day uh, with the fear of getting sick or being contaminated. So it's a deep, deep place, and things are boiling. They're boiling. Now, what does it mean? Uh, okay, thank you. So everybody has most everyone, unless you're a sociopath, has some level of empathy. And many people right now who are sensitive or were moderately sensitive prior to this are getting more sensitive, and they are empathizing on what we call a transpersonal empathy. That means that you are experiencing, say, the grief of all the first responders or the people on the front lines, because they are unable to actually process through their grief, because they are working 12 to 16 hours a day, and they are seeing unspeakable things that they can't really process. And so if you've been moderately sensitive or slightly sensitive, you've moved into solid empathy. And those who are already had deep empathy, could be in complete and total overwhelm right now. And know that if you're one of those people, you may need to be crying every day. It doesn't matter your gender. Emotions, if they're there, need to be processed. And you need to let yourself have them without shame, without illusion, that it means something about you other than you are being of service. Okay, because that's what it means. When we cry for others because they are unable to cry or grieve for themselves, we are being of service to them. And when you do that, there's that collective energy that is being processed, and it actually will help to deflate the bursts of anger and grief and frustration that we see happening, not only on social media, but in protests, and people getting frustrated that they can't move forward, right? People have a big illusion right now that moving forward is going to actually change their circumstances. Yes. Stephen talks about getting overwhelmed with everybody else's anger. Yes. So what happens when you empathize with somebody's anger and then you're irritable or angry? Give yourself the opportunity to make the distinction whether or not it's yours or it's the collective. That's what we'll call other people's anger. It may be a partner, it may be a friend, it may be your circle, it may be the family, or it could literally be the collective. Those who are in our consciousness, but we don't know them. So when you feel energy from the collective, ask yourself, is this mine or someone else's? And yourself will always know, and you will hear in your heart, in your mind, in your thoughts, yes, this is yours, or no, it's not. And if, either way, once you discern whether or not it's yours, you then have a choice as to whether or not you want to grieve it, to release it, really literally on behalf of somebody else. Um, Screaming and crying help in releasing anger. Anger is the thing that actually comes before grief. So anger is just, it's a short stop. It's like the stopgap to grief. When people are really angry, what they really want is to experience the grief that they're having, but they're not allowed to. They're not allowing themselves to, or their environment is not conducive to them grieving. So uh, know that. Know that if you have anger, it's the stopgap before grief. Yeah. Thank you, Sat. This is a deep time. That's a good word. Deep. Deep. Ah. Um, Let me see if there's anything else I want to say about that. Hmm. No. So let's just recap what we just talked about. If you have a lot of anger, ask yourself, is it mine or the collective? If it's yours, write it down. Write down, journal what it is that you want to look at, what it is that is bothering you, what it is that you are having a difficult time recognizing or embracing that you can't control. Whether it's the unknown, or whether or not it's your you are not in a safe place to move forward, or the appearance of moving forward in your life. But once you recognize what's happening, you can then make the next step towards what is going to bring uh, begin to move you out of that. Okay. Um, Journal, self-reflect, talk to yourself out loud, by yourself, with others. Be present to how you're feeling, and sometimes saying it out loud is actually the thing that makes you recognize what you're really feeling, what's really happening, so that you can again figure out what the next step is um, in this difficult time. So I think that's what I got for you today. I'm so glad that all of you showed up. It's wonderful to see you. And if you have ideas of things that you would like for me to discuss on my Friday chats, by all means, you can leave the ideas here. You can instant message me, or you can send me an email. But either way, know you are loved, know that you are seen, and be good to yourself and others. Thanks for showing up today, and have a good one.